Hello, this is Neil from masterpaintingnow.com, and in this lesson I'm going to show you guys how to draw torsos. Female torsos, we'll do a few of them, 4 of them to be precise, and using a really cool method. I'll just call it the bullet method. So the first thing I do is I start out with this bullet shape, and just so you can get a feel for that, let's go and watch that in real time while I talk for a second. So it's this bullet shape that I use for the ribcage. This really comes in handy, and I like to do the angle that the ribcage is facing and then the angle that the hips are facing, as you can see here. And so by doing this, you can capture any pose either you imagine or pose that you're looking at. So just imagine the upper part of the body being like this bullet shape, and then look at the angle of the collarbone, and that will be the angle of the ribcage. And then if you can try to match up the two, if you can see the two dents of the hip bones, then you can match up the angle of the hips, or kind of imagine like a line going across where the crotch is. Kind of imagine these two parts of the leg on equal wedges on each side. Right, so this is the basic shape here. And then of course between the hips and the ribcage you have your obliques, right? So you have those love handle muscles and fatty tissue. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish an angle that I want like this, and then I'm going to make the angle of the ribcage itself. So what angle is the ribcage sitting at, right? It's very rare that the angle of the ribcage is the exact angle of the, even if they're standing straight, they're probably leaning on one leg more than another, which will offset the pelvis angle a little bit to the ribcage angle. So those angles will be slightly different. Here, we're going to do an extreme angle shift because the way that she's going to be contorting her body. And so I have the angle of the hips here, which is pretty much horizontal, and the angle of the collarbone, so the ribcage. And you got to remember that when you turn to one side or the other, your ribcage is going to get closer to your pelvis on one side and farther on the other. This means that it's going to cause a crunch of the obliques on this side and a stretching of the obliques on this side. And so these are the two basic shapes. You have the bullet shape, and then you have this kind of underwear shape, which you can use for men as well. And if you're doing a man, you just have the legs come straight down like this. You don't have them come out. You just have them come straight down like that. And that would be a man. And you might make the ribcage a little bit wider. Right, and then I add that pacman wedge in there for the ribcage. Now here what I did, actually I'm going to play this in real time. So what I did here is I'm like, okay, if they were facing completely forward, this is how I would draw it. So it's good to draw it that way first. And then I'm going to go, well, what if they're slightly turning, twisting? Right? They're not just leaning to our left, they're right, but they're also twisting a little bit around this way. So I'm showing a little bit of the side plane. To do that, you just move the center line, and then you add this kind of side plane right here. So now I have kind of a side plane. You can do the same for the hips as well, which I'll show in this video. Right, so I'm imagining how these obliques are being crunched, right? So I'm just kind of overlapping the lines. And then here, they're going to be stretched, right? So I'm going to draw them stretched. And remember, to determine the place of the belly button, it's between the obliques. So that's another way, a good body mark. If you can see the belly button of your model, you know that the belly button is in between the love handles, right? So you know above the belly button is the bottoms of the rib cage, and right below the belly button are the tops of the hip bones where the obliques attach to. All right, so here I'm just kind of showing how the femur sticks out, and where it sticks out here is the widest part of the female figure. It's actually not at the hips, it's here at the crotch line. So at the thighs. Here, I usually always do this, even if you can't see. It's just a good thing to draw to get this feel here for this contour, is I draw the sartorius muscle here. And the sartorius muscle from this angle would actually come behind the vastus medialis, but you can kind of draw as one line. And then I'm drawing basic shape for the knee. That was a little bit too thick, so I thinned it. All right, so she's kind of staying like this, where this leg's coming out this way and this leg's coming out more straight. And so you can see how just placing those two shapes and then connecting the obliques gives you a really good sense of the female figure, right? Those two shapes. From there, it's just a matter of adding on details, anatomical details. And then you start to get, you know, a figure. And so now I'm looking at the shadows. By the way, I'm basing this on a model pose that I can't share, otherwise I would have shared it, but it's part of Proko's package. He has some really, really good photos in his package, so it's worth the money. So I recommend buying Proko's reference package. I think he has a couple different packages. I bought the big one that just contains everything. It has some good male models, some good female models, a lot of really good poses for drawing and learning from. So, and good quality lighting, you know, really good shadows. And so here, remember the other technique I show is on that bullet shape, you attach these like triangles here, and that gives you your wings and your deltoids, or your arms, you know, how your arms attach to the torso. I have a whole other tutorial showing how to attach the legs as well, and I cover this a lot in my new anatomy course, Anatomy 2.0. I think I cover it much better than I did in the first one. Right, so here, after we attach the arms, think about the breast. Remember, the breasts follow this, the rib line, remember, because this is also your pectorals follow this line as well, your coastal ridge line of the ribs. And then right here, what you're seeing part of that pectoral muscle. Remember, the pectoral muscle comes and it goes underneath the deltoids. So oftentimes, because of the fat and everything, it looks like it kind of looks as if the pecs just kind of flow right into the deltoid, as if it's all just one shape. But because of shadows, you can often see a separation right here where there's a change in plane. But that gives us this shape here. And then the pectoral muscle is being the fatty tissue of the breast overlap it, but it kind of looks like it's one line here. And because she's tilted to the side, and because this model is a little bit older, and this would even happen actually, even if she were like 19 or something, or 20, if she had breasts this large, it would still do this. Maybe not as much. Her skin is a little bit looser than a younger woman would be. So a younger woman might maintain her shape a little bit more when tilted like this, but this model has more looser skin, so you can see the breast is being pulled by gravity. This one will also be pulled by gravity, but it's gonna kind of build up on this side here because of the angle that we're viewing it in. And so from here, it's just a matter of interpreting shadows. And unfortunately, I can't really show you what I'm doing, but if you do have Proko's package, let me tell you what model this is too. This is, I don't know, it's the skinnier one. I can't remember her name right now. Let me get that for you. So yeah, that's Shannon, C-H-A-N-O-N. It's really hard to find good quality photos to draw from with really good lighting and everything and good poses. And so it's, for that reason alone, it's worth the money. There's a lot of poses in each pack. And it's very, I think it's like $14 for if you get the whole entire thing with all the models. And yeah, just really great. Yanin, the male model, really great stuff to work from. All right, let's go to the next pose now. So this one here, we're going to start from a side view, right? So remember, the side view of the ribcage looks a little different than the front view. This is not totally a side view. It's it's more of a side view than it is a 3/4 view, but it's slightly 3/4 view. And so I'm showing the split here of the ribcage. Also, this model has quite a long ribcage compared to the pelvis, so I'm having to draw, like, I would normally draw this shorter, but to kind of match what I'm seeing, kind of making it similar. So notice I do the ribcage in this kind of, you know, slightly 3/4 view, mostly side view. We're seeing mostly the side view here. And then her shoulder and arm are going to be lifted up here like this, and then the breast will come like that. But then I'm attaching it to this shape, right? Notice that same shape is here. I'm attaching these two parts of the iliac, the hip bones, the little part that stick out, part of the iliac crest here. And as they come down, I'm still drawing, this is the suit or the underwear shape, right? But notice the underwear shape is being foreshortened because it's turned sideways to us. And then you'd have the leg part that sticks out here that I showed before. So that's still there from the front view, right? So this whole shape here is from the front view. But then I have the side view as well. I got to think about it as a three-dimensional object. And so from the side view, it's much thinner than the front view. And so I'm going to draw these kind of side planes here, like that. And then this kind of represents, because you're seeing some of the buttocks, so this represents some of the buttocks, and then your love handles as it comes down to your thigh. This is the, the bone would stick out right about here. And so I'm imagining the love handle, see how it flows right down into the pelvis. And so remember, the love handle is that obliques are showing, it attaches from the front area here, but also attaches all the way to the back. So it's attached all the way to the side plane of the hip bone. And so if you kind of know where the hip bone is, then you know where the love handles are attaching, or the obliques. And so you have the obliques here, and then you have part of the thigh, this inner wedge of the thigh right here. And that's where you'd see the sartorius muscle that come from here, comes down like that, boom, to the inside of the knee. And so we're seeing, you got to imagine when you're in 3/4 view like this, you're seeing a little bit of the side plane of the leg as well as the front plane. And because of that, you're seeing a little bit of the buttocks, because remember, from the side view, you can see the buttocks. So you're seeing a little bit of the buttocks here as it flows into the leg. And so it's going to look thicker because it's adding the butt mass to the thigh. You can sometimes distinguish the two, usually not from the contour, but from the shadowing. And then when you're in this view, you have to remember that the leg, it comes and attaches to the buttock behind the body. And so it's overlapped by this leg. And then we're seeing a lot of the torso and the abdomen area here. I usually draw a line coming down like this, and then you're going to see just a little bit of the obliques and the hip kind of sticking out. So that's like the stomach is kind of overlapping it. It's kind of like behind it. So it's foreshortened and it's being overlapped, which is part of foreshortening. And then this leg is kind of turning toward us, because normally if she weren't twisting her leg toward us like this, the knee, we'd be seeing more of just the inside of the knee, and the leg would be facing this way. The knee would be on this side. But because she's kind of twisting her knee toward us, twisting her whole leg toward us, we can see the knee facing us in this pose. By the way, these two poses are toward the top. So if you do download the pack, it's toward the top images, if you want to find them easier. I could have given them, I think they're numbered. And then I usually draw like this kind of sweeping arm motion first, because it kind of gives you the thickness of the arm, and then you can add the anatomy on top of that. And it's really good for just capturing the flow. Just think of the whole arm as just a line, and it can really help you capture the flow of the arm. And it's just easier to do that. And you can also do that with legs for like gesture drawing, and then you can add the anatomy on top of that. The numbers that I used in that pack, in Shannon's pack, is 6, 7, 12, and 2. 6, 7, 12, and 2 were the ones I used. And now I'm just simplifying the shadows. And adding a basic head. And here I'm just showing the two basic shapes, right? So you have a slightly 3/4 view of the ribcage, a simplified ribcage, and then a simplified pelvis shape. You could imagine this being, fully 3D and but I usually just draw the sides I can see. But if it helps you to draw the full 3D shape, you can draw the whole top view there. That would be covered by everything. But so you see how you have the stomach muscles here overlapping a little bit of this side plane, so you can kind of see the obliques and the hip bone here, or the hip on the hip. And so this whole line is kind of, this whole shape, right? This tummy shape is coming in front of this right here. So it's kind of blocking our view from some of this. We're not seeing as much of it as if she would turn more toward us. This is a hard pose to draw, but if you start with these basic shapes, it really does help. And this helps with a lot of different poses. If you think about the rib cage as a basic shape, even if it were tilting toward us, you can still foreshorten that basic shape. It's kind of like a, this kind of bullet shape. And if you kind of imagine that facing toward us, you kind of want to learn how that shape looks from the top view. You can tilt that egg. Just think of it as an egg shape, basically. This is the bottom of the egg, the top of the egg. If you can turn that egg in space, right, you should be able to do that because you should have already taken my course, The Fundamentals of Drawing Anything, or you should have learned the fundamentals somewhere. So you should be able to draw all the basic shapes from your imagination from any angle, right? The cube, a sphere obviously looks the same from every angle. An egg shape, and just an oval. Egg is almost an oval, not quite. It's a little bit thinner on the top than on the bottom. Pyramids, cylinders. You should be able to draw these from any angle from your imagination and understand the foreshortening and all that kind of stuff, overlapping, etc. So that it should be pretty easy for you to imagine these basic shapes and then draw them from any angle. Just a quick over sketch there to show what I'm talking about. So far we have, I'm just kind of showing on the drawing how those two shapes relate. Boom. So those are the first two. We got two more to go. So I'm here on the site now. The packages have changed quite a bit. So if you just want Shannon's package, it's $16. But it comes with 313 photos, and they're all really good. Lighting and shadow, just a really good model to learn from. Here's some of the poses in the pack. And if you want, the pack I bought is this one. I don't remember it being this expensive, but I don't know, maybe it has always been that expensive. But anyway, so $68, you get all these 5 models. It doesn't include Seka or Laura, but you can always buy those separately if you want more models. This is more than enough to learn from, though. Or you can just go one at a time as you're learning. I really like, Veronica's really good too, but I really like the thinness of this model to learn from. She has enough fat that if she's twisting, you can see the fat right here. But she's also skinny enough that you can see really cool landmarks and bone marks and stuff. And then for the male model, I really like Yoni because he's really defined, has a lot of muscles. This is a good model too, but I really like Yoni. And then she's really skinny too, so if you really want to see, and muscular, really toned. And I haven't looked at her pack, but she looks kind of a mix between. She looks like she has decent tone and decent amount of fat, so somewhere between Veronica and Shannon, it looks like there. But anyway, I haven't looked at her pack yet, so how much is it? $16.50 as well. So individual packs are $16.50, so you can always start from an individual pack and then work your way up. But anyway, really good models. Like I said, it's really hard to find good quality photos where the camera is, angled well to the body, so you're getting a good view, a proper view. Oftentimes they're too low or too high, and with really good shadows, really good lighting, good poses, good lighting, hard to find. So if you're having a hard time finding it like I was, these are great packs. Anthony's a great model to learn from too. Anyway, so especially superhero stuff. All right, let's get back to it. This already makes my video no longer available for monetization for some reason. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. Not like I really make anything from the videos anyway. I do this as a complete free service for my students and anyone else that, potential students that want to learn. I'm going to minimize this. All right, so here, hold on, I'm going to go, okay, so I just want to make sure what pose it was. So first I'm establishing the kind of angle of the collarbones and then the angle of the hip, so they're pretty much on the same. Once I have those angles, then I can, draw the basic bullet shape in there. And notice that the bullet shape here is thinner than it would be because I'm trying to fit it to this model. So you can change the shape of your bullet to fit the model that you're drawing. And here I know I have a slight 3/4 view, so I want to offset that center line, and I'm kind of drawing it like a 3/4 view. So you have the center line is over to the left more. We're seeing more of the right-hand side of the bullet. And then I'm drawing this underline here, which is different than this line that goes back like this, representing this kind of like as if it were a rectangle. It's kind of hard to see that I did that, but it is there. Those two angles right there. And then what I did here is I kind of imagine how all this. Sometimes I'll do this right here. It's another technique I do. I'm mixing different techniques here. I kind of pull this tummy shape down like this, right? This whole entire tummy shape down in the 3/4 view. And then I'm like, okay, how does everything attach here? I'm seeing some of her butt. And then I'm like, okay, now let's go back in and I'm going to add this shape to show how this fits in there to make sure I'm modeling it right. So I used a couple different techniques there, but ultimately I'm coming back to, see, I noticed that that shape was too wide on the side. And so I'm like, okay, I really exaggerated that butt coming out, which could have made a cool drawing, by the way. But I'm trying to go a little bit more accurate here to show the technique. And a lot of this is the same as the other pose, very similar. But it's not quite as, the hips are more, or turned more. And now I'm just, you know, simplifying the shadows. Adding the basic head shape, some basic arms. Right, this is mainly focusing on the torso, so all this right here is in torso, and this is just, you know, form. And in this case, you know, I'm not really having to invent the form so much because the shadows are really good. I'm just having to really study the shadows, like look at it, and because some of them are hard to see. And then just kind of changing it. I thought that was a little too tall. And then I'm showing the basic, how those basic shapes relate from this pose. All right, let's go to the last one. Just so we kind of had an idea where it's going. This is the pose. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish the angle of the rib cage and the pelvis. And so you see I did that with those two lines, right? So this is the angle of the rib cage and this is the angle of the pelvis. It's not the center line necessarily. Like you kind of have that center line kind of flowing and it kind of like it's going to be more curved, right? I'm trying to look at it as these two separate static parts because any pose has to have the pelvis bone and the rib cage bone. And these the rib cage is a little bit flexible, but the shape pretty much stays the same. And the pelvis isn't flexible. So you're going to have this, if you can imagine where the pelvis is on the pose, that's going to be, you know, a fixed box basically. That's not going to move. And then the rib cage is another fixed solid, right? And those two solids have to be at some sort of angle to the viewer. And so that's what I'm establishing first. And then I'm drawing that basic bullet shape on there. It has a slight 3/4 view, so I'm kind of off-centering here and then putting a little bit of side view. You can also do kind of a, you know, rectangle bottom here, if that helps you kind of get that shape better. So see how I kind of turned that to a rectangle, the bottom here, and we're seeing like the edge of a rectangle. And then, so it kind of comes up to a point on this side, right? It doesn't stay thick on this side. And then here, I'm kind of, I take away that. I know it's still kind of representing this, but I want to kind of get to the anatomy a little bit now. And so I'm showing how that's going to be love handle, because remember, once I have this line, the hip, this basic underwear shape, I know that the love handles, you know, the obliques fit on, they connect up to the ribs. So I'm kind of showing that there. And then see I have that basic distorted rectangle. Not really sure what the shape would be called, so. And now I'm starting to just draw some anatomy, kind of relying on what I see a little bit, and then also what I know, right? So kind of trying to capture a little bit of the likeness, but also relying on what I know about the muscles, where they are for the hips. Again, I talk about this in my Anatomy 2.0 course. I also have a free lesson that goes into how legs attach to hips a little bit. So got that, and then this leg is kind of coming down like this. Now here, I'm kind of relying on what I see, but also what I know at the same time, right? So I know I have that shape here, and see how that fits into that shape. But then we also have a little bit of a side plane here, because it's a slightly 3/4 view that just barely turned toward us. So we're seeing a little bit of that wedge right here in that side view, and then we know how the obliques and stuff attach. But sometimes you have to just go by what is there, like what you see, and go, okay, I want those particular shapes. I like it, looks good, so let's add those shapes in there. And then here, you know, because she's kind of leaning forward a little bit and to the side, the breast is going to change shape because it's going to fall down due to gravity. And so that's what we're seeing here. And you can rely on the photo for that, you know, for how that contortion happens. And this is why it's good to study from photos, because it helps you understand, and different models, you know, because different breasts, different sizes, you know, different strengths of skin, like how stretchy their skin is and stuff. So you'll get different shapes that'll happen when they're bending over and stuff. So it's really good to learn from all these different models and how the breasts change shape, and you know, to copy those shapes, you know, understand the anatomy, like draw the anatomy onto the figure like you would draw from imagination, but then look at the shapes they take, you know, the final shape they take in the photos, so that way your brain starts to memorize these kinds of shapes. So this arm is really foreshortened, and it's in this whole part here, the part of the rib cage and then the pectoral muscle is overlapping the deltoid. So all this is overlapping. So this is, the deltoid actually is bigger than this, but it's behind like this. See, so it's behind. One object is in front of the other object, and this is also in front of the arm a little bit. The arm is going back in space away from us, so it's highly foreshortened. And so it has to be like this. Just a basic shape for the hand. And then I just start interpreting the shadows and simplifying them. What I noticed in the photo, and this was kind of interesting, this model from the other 3/4 view, I did something similar. The way the lighting, you know, kind of hit this top part. And one thing I noticed is my two monitors are very off. My drawing monitor, I need to change it. I either need to draw on a slightly gray background, which is probably better anyway, or something, because when I was drawing this was all so light on my other monitor. And so now I can see it doesn't quite look right here. It looks fine, but it looked better on my Cintiq. But what I noticed is that the pectoral muscle, kind of like, because she's kind of bending forward, it was like this crease right here where they had like part of this upper pectoral muscle is pressing into the fatty tissue here that's attached, because normally this fatty tissue comes up all the way to here, but here there's like this change in plane right here. And so I represent that with the shadows, and I really liked how the lighting kind of went around this part right here. It was just kind of cool how that lighting worked. And there's the basic shape. So notice here, I kind of changed this. You kind of see a plane here, and a plane here. It's similar, but I put two planes here, which is something that you can think about this three-dimensional shape as having these two different planes that are slightly different angles to each other, rather than just one flat plane. Kind of imagine two planes. Then the third plane, you know, this becomes the obliques here. Although, you know, you don't draw that for the basic shape. And so those are the two basic shapes. And let's look at all four of them that we did. So you see here, I just have one plane and one plane for these. You could do the two planes like that. So you could actually add another plane here. So kind of change it a little bit and then come more straight down for that plane. But oftentimes this shape serves just fine. But for this kind of pose where you can really see the plane shifts, you might want to add those planes into the basic shape. So you just kind of modify the basic shape. Like I said, they're more of a guideline than anything else. If you can just kind of visualize where this front shape is, you know, in here, and just kind of visualize that front shape, the side plane, you just gather from what you're looking at, and you kind of, as long as you have that front plane correctly placed in there, then the side plane will work itself out as you know, go between what you know and what you can see. But yeah, anyway, it's a really good technique to use these basic shapes and to learn these basic shapes. So I highly recommend, if you don't know them yet, to learn these basic three-dimensional shapes. This is kind of a modified, you know, box. And this is kind of a modified egg shape. And if you can just learn to turn those shapes around in 3D space, it really helps when you apply it to figures, whether from imagination or whether you're going by what you're looking at. Because when you're going by what you're looking at, you should be going by not trying to draw exactly what you see, but interpret what you see, right? So you're mostly going by what you know from imagination. It's as if you look at the pose and go, okay, how would I draw that from imagination? And then you stop looking at the pose, and now you look at your paper only, blank piece of paper. You're not looking at any model, and you're remembering what that pose looked like. How would I translate that to paper? And then you go back to the model again and go, okay, how is the rib cage? Where is it? Where is it at? What's the angle? Okay, put that in there. Put the pelvis in there, and then you start going by, by my knowledge again. Okay, I know the obliques have to attach here and here, etc. And so you're kind of going back and forth between the two techniques, between what you're looking at, but you're interpreting it, you're drawing it how you would draw it from imagination, rather than going, okay, well, the angle of the breast here, cross. If I draw a line like this, it crosses through the elbow. If I draw a line straight down from the nose, it crosses to the nipple, and it's to the right of the crotch. Like that gets really boring, where you're trying to be a robot and just draw exactly what you see. Well, the negative space looks like this, so I need to make sure I have that negative space. That's so boring. Again, that's my opinion. Someone might find that kind of drawing really fun, and more power to you. This video isn't really going to be much help to you because we're not using that technique. We're using more our from imagination technique. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you've gained anything, actually, if you just watched up to this point, can you just smash the like button? Because I doubt you would have watched it this long if you didn't like the video, right? So even if you only mildly liked it, if it kept you to the end, then it's enough for you, I think, to hit the like button, right? I think it deserves a like if it kept your attention that long. But all right, thanks for watching.